In Asia, there's certainly a big issue of disasters, and we've seen a lot of those events in the last year. In 2013, many cities and countries were walloped by storms, and that's one of the big current and future states. I think if we add climate change into the mix, recognizing that the region is very urbanized and is increasingly urbanizing, there will be even more pressures from disasters, but also from other climate-related events, including heat stress and increasing changing patterns of rainfall, which also affects other issues like health impacts in terms of changing patterns of disease. In the ACERN cities, we've seen not only a process which has helped build capacity at a local level around understanding climate change impacts and risks, but we're seeing action, and there's some really exciting examples of work that are cutting across 10 different areas of action. So ranging from looking at land use planning and trying to bring in climate change understanding into that, and how we need to be thinking about choices in terms of where we're developing the city, where the city is growing, trying to think about where floodplains are and where people, that those may not be the most opportune places to be constructing new developments, but also looking at solid waste management and as well as disaster and emergency response measures. So I think activities around those lines, that's where medium-sized cities need to be taking action. Again, coming from the ACERN experience, we're seeing projects like helping to monitor changing patterns of disease. So looking at dengue fever, for example, which is an issue where we're finding that there's not the same predictability in terms of when dengue season happens. And there's a need for epidemiologists and climate scientists to come together to try to better monitor and forecast what those impacts, when those impacts are going to play out, and also to help be able to respond better. Small and medium-sized cities in Asia are create an opportunity because they're cities that have not yet been built out in the same way that megacities have. We're seeing more of the growth in both population and also in land use and land conversion in smaller and medium-sized cities. And so whereas in larger cities, in order to prepare for climate change impacts, there's a lot of retrofitting that's needed. In medium and small-sized cities, we can be thinking more about how we make forward investments in infrastructure and how do we bring in new perspectives and new models to make sure that those infrastructure measures and efforts are not building in risk, but building in resilience. And so I think that there's potential to be looking for more innovations in public finance and in looking at how do we bring in private sector funding and create partnerships with governments to create incentives for more resilient planning and infrastructure, but also other softer measures too, looking at, again, disease surveillance. That's an area where there's actually a lot of potential for new business opportunities, and that as well as solid waste management, micro-insurance. These are all areas where there's potential to bring the know-how and innovation from the private sector toward goals of helping poor and vulnerable populations be more equipped to respond to the range of climate